Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and as always, we have a great show for you tonight. To start things off here in just a few moments, we're going to be having a great panel discussion tonight on the Coach's Corner panel, and I'll introduce the gang here in just a moment, but just got a few quick announcements here, and I want to remind everybody, of course, that we are live every Thursday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Central here in the blogtalkradio.com network. Best way to find us, of course, is go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and you'll find us there front and center. You can also visit that link a little bit later on and just scroll down to the on-demand section and find all of the previously recorded shows, including tonight's will be there in its entirety, so you can listen to the show when it's convenient for you if you're not able to join us live. Some other great ways to tune in as well, go to iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, also TalkStreamLive.com, and I think I said TuneIn.com as well. Some other great social media platforms. I forgot there for a second where we were. And you can tune in there again, just type in Golf Talk Live. A little bit later on the show, in the second half, Yvette Pegues is going to be joining me. She's the Chief Transformational Officer for YourInvisibleDisability.com. She's also Ms. Wheelchair International for 2016-17 and host of DisabilityLife.tv. And she was actually on with another group of adaptive golfers on the Women of Golf show on Tuesdays a little earlier in the season with, of course, my good friend LPGA professional Cindy Miller and I. And I invited Yvette back to talk about her story a little bit more in depth, and I think you'll find it very, very interesting, so hope you'll stick around and join us. But first off, let me say before I bring the gang out here and introduce them, I'm very excited tonight about welcoming a new sponsor to the show. Beginning this week, tonight's the first night, GolfSwing.com will be sponsoring the Coach's Corner panel segment of Golf Talk Live. I'll tell you a little bit about them. GolfSwing.com, with its cutting-edge technology, have teamed up alongside some of the best golf instructors, coaches, and swing gurus in the business. Together, they have created one of the best video teaching and training online platforms in golf. So if you're ready to break 100, 90, 80, or even 70, then join their online video academy and learn from some of the best. In addition to sponsoring the Coach's Corner segment, each week I will feature a different golf instructional video tip and instructor, and I'm going to do that feature tonight through my social media platform with the first instructor after tonight's broadcast. So join today, watch, practice, and improve your game. And if you want to learn more and join the great online video academy at golfswing.com, go to golfswing.com. All right, we've got Coach's Corner panel. Coming up, first up, of course, is Chuck Evans. He's a Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher, Golf Digest Top Teachers in America, Top 50 Growth of the Game teacher, and Chuck is, of course, the Director of Instruction at Emerald Bay Golf Course, just down the street from me in Destin, Florida, and, of course, the owner of Chuck Evans Golf. Also joining on the panel is Bill Abrams. He's a PGA professional and owner, Director of Instruction at Golf Solutions Academy in Balmoral Woods, Crete, Illinois. And also you can find him in the winter months. He's going to be down at Grand Palm Resort in Florida. He'll tell us a little bit more about that after tonight's panel discussion, and he'll give us a quick update. And rounding out the panel, of course, is my good friend Jamie Leno-Zimron. She's a speaker, instructor, body worker, and consultant, and an Aikido 6th degree black belt, Class A LPGA teacher professional, a corporate and conference speaker, executive trainer and coach, and speaker for Vistage International and TEC Canada, which is, of course, the executive committee. Guys, welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Thanks for having us, Ted.
Thanks again, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
I appreciate
it. Always.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, as always, for giving of your time. Very excited, as I said. Of course, we got a great sponsor, golfswing.com, that wants to sponsor the Coaches Corner panel. They found it very interesting and intriguing, some of the great discussions that we have, and tonight we are not going to disappoint them. So I'm going to start off with, in order that I read you out, and then I'll reverse it as we go along. So, Chuck, I'm going to start with you. Every golfer varies, obviously, with their abilities and understanding of technique. What typically, in your mind, is needed or required in developing the basics of golf?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is learn how to hit the ball solid. That's the very first thing. So then what are the ingredients for hitting it solid? Well, those can be that player's neutral grip, that player's pivot points, whether it's front, rear, or center pivot, and then having enough pressure forward at impact to be able to strike the ball than the ground. So, there's a lot of stuff about grip, aim, line, and posture, but you know what? You look throughout all history, the Hall of Fame is filled with players with different grips, different stances, different postures. So, that to me, those really aren't basic things, but I think it starts at that player's neutral grip, them understanding that they've got to get enough pressure forward to their lead side, and then hit ball first, ground second.
Right. Well said. Bill, what about you? I mean, I know we obviously don't want to get too repetitive here, but obviously there is a sort of basic understanding in golf, and a lot of amateurs, I think, particularly when they're first coming out as a beginner or newbie, as we might refer to it, they want to understand the basics and sort of how do we start them off and give them a good understanding and help them to understand what their goals and what their accomplishments should be directed to. And obviously everybody has their own individual goals, but generally as a beginner, where do we want to start them?
I really think the balanced setup is the first place to go, because without that, then being able to grip the club from there, I don't think that a player has a hoot of a chance to be able to hit the ball solidly, no matter what they can swing their upper body. If their lower body isn't engaged and balanced on the ground, there's no way that they're going to be able to make a good, consistent move through the shot, make a good backswing, or make a good through swing, whether it's the putter or the driver.
Right, exactly. Jamie, again, just to follow up on that, there's a lot of, and the next question is obviously going to clarify this a little bit better, but most people coming out for their initial lesson understand, they've got to grip the club and they've got to stand and address the ball a certain way. But are there other fundamentals? Are there other things that we want them to really learn and understand when they first, come out to the practice tee and work with one of us? What are some of the things they need to know?
I think you teed that up for me. With the way I teach it, I call it TI golf, which is I blend martial arts principles, which are about being centered, grounded, focused, being in charge of your own body, having a very conscious mind-body connection, and we're just talking about having a balanced setup with the lower body engaged. It's so important. Every sport really starts with the lower body. Feet are the basis of hip movement, and then your upper body and shoulders and hands and arms move in connection. That's another big principle, connection. So the upper body moves in connection with the lower body being a stable and initiating place for that, which delivers alignment and power and consistency. So I think in golf we don't really educate people well enough on how to use their lower body, even though Jack Nicklaus said golf is played between the arches of the feet. So those are the principles that I think are really important. And the other thing just that I'd like to say, after what the others were saying, are the basics. I call them PGA. Most people think the PGA means the Professional Golf Association, and I call the PGA posture, grip, alignment. Those are your fundamentals. And LPGA is about loving your posture, grip, alignment. When everything really is in the correct position, you learn correct posture, grip, alignment. You feel comfortable, you feel balanced, you feel aligned. You're able to move in that connected lower to upper body manner that actually every sport works with, except golfers seem to try to want to kill it with their upper body. So I would just leave people with the LPGA, love your posture, grip, alignment, and these principles of center, ground, connection, relaxation, stability, balance, These are principles that are really important,
right.
and that you are the one that makes your golf ball go. So you want to have charge of your body, mind, and emotions, and so you can deliver
right.
your energy properly into the golf ball.
Right. Well said. Okay, so taking on that understanding, great answers, by the way, from all three of you. But Bill, I'm going to go to you next. Sort of taking that principle and understanding of the basics, my next question is this. Should new golfers generally start with learning the basics, and I'll explain why I'm asking you this, or should they be taught one area of the game first before moving on? If so, why? And the reason why I'm asking that question is a lot of people say, well, we really should start with the short game and sort of work backwards, from green to tee as opposed to tee to green. What are your thoughts there? Is there a certain area of the game that we maybe should be teaching them first? And if so, why?
Well, great question, Ted. And newer players, the first thing I do is ask them the level of how much they've played and what their experience is. When I get a click on that, the first question I'll ask is, if there was one shot that I could teach you that would make you have the ability or the love to play more golf, what would it be? And it varies from player to player, depending on their amount of time that they want to practice, the amount of time that they have in front of them, and really the type of play it is going to be. Is it going to be they're going to be playing corporately more in corporate scrambles? Or are they going to be playing in a couples group? Or are they going to be playing in a league? Asking them the shot that would make them the happiest if they could master it. And that's really pretty simply where I go with it.
Right. That's a great point. Jamie, I'm going to go to you, and then Chuck, I'm going to let you round out this question. Jamie, same question to you. Is there a particular area? I mean, obviously we want to, as you talked about very, very briefly about teaching some of the basics and that, the posture, grip, and alignment. But beyond that, is there a certain area of the game that you feel we need to be starting with as a starting point for? And I'm talking about new golfers here. Obviously, as Bill pointed out, they're golfers that have maybe been playing for a little while. There might be a different assessment involved. But for newer players particularly, where's the best place that you have success starting with?
Well, honestly, I do actually like to start with putting and chipping first. I mean, the idea to start with a shot that you like the most or that you're most interested in that would really get your juices going, I think is great. That's what we call a very student-centered approach, and I think it's very important. At the same time, as a sort of pedagogically, as a teacher, I think that it's very helpful to learn, I call it sort of the micro to the macrocosm, small to large. And Tiger Woods actually learned to play from green to tee, not from tee to green. Mm-hmm. And so that means the putting stroke is, back, hit, make square contact, come through. Maybe a little more coming through, what we call acceleration. And then that moves to a short chip shot, and then a larger pitch shot may go to short iron. Mm-hmm. So, kind of building up, what we say, building up through the bag. But to me, it's the principle of how we grow. Like when people pull out their driver and they just want to hit their driver and they hardly know the swing or golf. To me, it's like, well, nobody popped out of the womb a big adult. We started out small, and we had to grow. Right. And as we grow, these basic skills, walk, talk, etc., come online, and then we can do more complex things as we get into like middle school, high school, and turn into adults. I kind of see college as fairway woods, shall we say? So I kind of like to follow that pattern in a sense, and I think that that whatever it is that we choose or that the student may choose and just say, hey, I've got to hit long shots. That's what I want to do. I don't have patience for this. Whatever it is, I think that it's the principles, the basics, you can teach using the vehicle of any part of the game. So again, my preference is, in fact, to go from the short game up to the longer game. But whatever it is, we teach you the basics are part of any part of the game, and so within that we can get the basics across. It doesn't help to kind of teach principles separate from from the actual shots that people are hitting. Okay,
great answer. No, that's fantastic. Chuck, what about you? I mean, again, we're going to start with some of the basic fundamentals of putting a good working swing together, but are there certain areas that you like to start them with to really get them off the ground, if you will? No pun intended. Obviously, we want to get the ball airborne, but is there a certain area of the game, or does it really matter in your mind?
Well, I typically start them with chipping as well as high handicappers, simply because I think there's three things they need to focus on, and that is how the club sets to the ball, hands are set to the club, and then how your body is set to the ball. So you got your club alignments, your hand alignments, your body alignments, because golf ultimately is an alignment game. When you look at the data, 78% of all right-handed golfers hit fades or slicers. They're also aimed 30 yards left of their target, so they swing outside in and pull it across. So that's an alignment issue. So we start with chipping, which is a motion 2 feet back and 2 feet through. And once you accomplish that motion, then I like to take them into pitching, because now we add a little bit of wrist cocking, which allows a second lever to get in there and hit the ball. And as they become accomplished at that, we go into punch shots, and then from there we go into full swings. So, but each one of these requires a different setup, a different ball position, and a different alignment. So they're learning how to get the club to the ball, what the grip and the handle end of the club need to do, and how they need to be aligned to hit certain shots. So I start with chipping, and then I go pitching, then I have them hit punch shots, then I hit them full swings. And in between chipping and pitching, we're going to do putting as well. But I don't start at full swing. I always start back and work it up from small swings, because if you can't control the club at a 2-foot swing, how are you going to control it in a 22-foot swing? So that's kind of where we start,
Yeah, I agree with.
We've all had these high handicap players come to us and say, I want to hit my driver better. I go, well, how's your iron game? How's your short game? Well, my short game's great. Okay, well, let's hit a few wedges. Okay, yeah, it's not so great, believe me. Okay,
right.
Maybe we should learn on controlling the club a little more.
Yeah, I know. I know, and I agree with you. I'm laughing because that's generally, especially with, and I think the guys by far, and I'm talking about the amateur players out there, by far worse than young ladies that I see in that. But you're exactly right. They and I understand it's exciting to smash the ball a couple hundred yards down the center of the fairway. Who wouldn't be excited with that? But there's much more important issues that need to be addressed and fixed first. So great answers, guys.
Right.
Jamie, I'm gonna start with you on this particular question here. In your experience, what typically gives amateurs the most difficulty on the course? Based on your examples that you've worked with, and how would you address that area in your lesson?
Well, I will say that it really does vary individually. Some people really have trouble with their driver. I think a lot of people have trouble with their driver, especially newer players. They'll look at these big club heads that we have these days, and they're a little bit freaked out. It just seems so big and such a big club. So, I've definitely seen people who are just so wayward with their drives, and then it's just catch up after that. Now they're in long grass. Now they're in bunkers, whatever, or now they're in the trees. I think that, those are really big issues in the first place. So trouble shots, I like to do whole lessons, and even I've done golf schools on trouble shots, because anything that really kind of gets a golfer scared, feeling so much stress, and then they kind of lose it. And they also often don't know any little variations in technique. What do I do with long grass? What do I do with an uphill or a downhill? What do I do when I'm in the sand? So these are the areas that I find that people sort of lose it the most, either when they get in trouble or they're in these sort of trouble shot positions that they don't really know how to handle.
Right, exactly. I would agree with that too. Chuck, I'm going to come back to you. Take a breath, because I know you just spoke a moment ago. And based on your experience, some of the and again, I know it's going to vary from player to player. Obviously, there's no one or right specific answer here, but there sometimes tends to be a pattern, areas that a lot of amateurs have difficulty with on the course. What do you do specifically to address some of those issues?
Well, in addition, as we know, driving, amateurs by and large drive the golf ball horribly. But the next thing they do really bad is their approach shots. You know, they don't know how far they hit their clubs. They don't know where to aim. They're aiming at every single pin, and they're aiming at right-hand pins, being a slicer. So that typically doesn't work together. So I see a lot of course management, which is related to approach shots and what you hit off the tee, what angles, and I typically see that more with the better player. The high handicap amateurs, you know, they've got both issues. They've got driver, they've got approach issues, they got every issue you can think of. But the better players don't seem to really understand how the course design was laid out and what kind of shot it's calling for. I mean, if you're somebody that doesn't have a really good short game, why would you ever try to fly it to the back of the green to a back pin? What happens if you go long? You know, you're just waiting to scull it over the green. So I think by and large, amateurs and even better players, course management is the ultimate thing, because they're going to put themselves in positions that they're not used to. And I've done this a number of times. I mean, I had the top 15 juniors from Europe over here a few years ago, and they were each from a different country. And I took them out on the par fours. I put them at 100 yards in the middle of the fairway. I put them on the fringes on the par three, and I put them at 225 on par fives in the middle of the fairway. All they had to do was make par. And none of them made par. None of them broke 80. And that's taking away their tee shot. So they just didn't know how to handle that, you know. So I think course management and how to manage your misses, that's a huge thing. I mean, you know, par threes, generally the greens are smaller. You don't have to aim at any pins. Just aim to the middle of the green. You know, at the most you're going to have a 20-foot putt generally, you know. Par fives, if you can't hit the green in two, don't hit a driver then. Hit something you can put in play. You're going to lay up anyway, so why not use something that you can put in the fairway, like a 3-wood. So that's the biggest thing for me. Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is basically how they manage themselves on the course.
Right. Well said. That's an excellent point that you bring up. Bill, what about yourself? I mean, I'm sure you agree with much of what both have said so far, but is there anything else that you can think of that a lot of amateurs struggle with out in the course? And if so, what is it, and what do you do to try and help them through it?
Yeah, I really see a lot of what both have said, but defining what we want to do. And I think that's a big problem with any level of player. You know, we'll say, you know, I don't want to hit it too far. I don't want to hit it here. I don't want to hit it there. And that's the wrong mindset to be taking into a shot, as opposed to saying, I want to hit it here. I want to hit it there. I'm going to hit it here. I'm not going to try. I'm going to. And I think that clouding their brain that way, you know, it really makes it very difficult for players to do that. And I work a lot on players defining what they want to do. We'll do a playing lesson or a little brief playing lesson with hitting shots on the course, and, you know, I'll watch them hit a shot, and they'll hit a good one, and I'll say, what was your thought? What was your mindset on that? What were you trying to do? Same thing, conversely, with a poor shot. What were you trying? What was your thought process? Well, I didn't want to hit it here. I didn't want to hit it too far. Okay, we have to correct that. And, you know, a lot of it is the mindset of any level of player.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And, you know, something else, too, and I know this is kind of a lot, both what really everybody is saying, but another thing that I find with a lot of, especially with the amateurs, and even some pros sometimes will see this on TV, and they reach in the bag and they're pulling out their 6-iron, let's say, and then they'll go back in and they'll pull out their 5-iron because they've decided that the 6 isn't going to do the job. I think making a decision and then committing to that decision is something that a lot of amateurs struggle with. And I know that falls into, Chuck, what you were talking about with course management, but it's not just about how to handle certain situations, but it's also about making a decision and then committing to that decision. If you're picking up a club, whatever it may be, and you're very indecisive and very unsure that you've made the right choice, more often than not, you're not going to have success pulling off whatever shot, again, it could be. So making that good decision sometimes, or just committing to the decision, even if it's the wrong one, at least making a decision and feeling confident with it, I think adds to your level of play. Now, this question's similar, but with a little bit of a twist. And I think, Chuck, we're starting back with you. Obviously, we talked about what some of the challenges that golfers typically struggle with in their game. But what I want you to do is, what are some of those struggles, but yet are the easiest to fix from a teaching professional or coach's standpoint? Some of the issues that a lot of amateurs come to you with that typically are the easiest to fix on our end. Anything out there that you can think of, Chuck?
Well, other than course management, yeah, I think there is more strategy involved. So get in their mind, find out what they're thinking. I do a lot of on-course stuff, and when they hit different shots into the green, and especially from around the green, and I'll say, what shot do you like to hit here? And they'll hit the shot, and then I'll give them 2 or 3 options, and I said, all right, so now which one has the highest success probability? And that's the one I would be playing. I would be playing the low success shots,
Right.
Because you get a lot of the youngsters, all they want to do is hit the high flop shot. Well, that's
right.
Great. It looks great on TV, but if you're not very good at it, why are you going to keep hitting that shot?
Right. Yeah, and you're right. It ties in with that course management. Sometimes making the right decision is the simplest fix of all. I mean, if you're pulling out your 60-degree lob wedge and you're not very good at utilizing it, there's no point in pulling it out because you're probably going to thin it and hit it over the green or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, sometimes making that right decision is sometimes the simplest fix. Bill, what are your thoughts here? What are some of the things that you've come across? Just maybe give us a quick example of things that you see a lot of amateurs particularly struggling with, but really actually an easy fix can be applied in most cases.
Going back along a bit of what Chuck said is shot selection, especially around the green. I utilize a little way of throwing the ball. If you and I are having a contest for $1 or a Coca-Cola or something, how are you going to get the ball close? By throwing it. Are you going to go high? Are you going to go low? Are you going to go along the ground? And, that along the side of the green is something that's very valuable for the players, but also it's just shot selection in general. I always have a motto with my players is make the next shot easier than the one you just had. Because that's where people get themselves fouled up, as we say, with strategy and picking clubs. They go ahead and they're sitting in a buried lie in the rough at 200 yards, and they try to hit a fairway metal or a hybrid, and now they're 10 yards in front of themselves, wasting the shot and looking at a similar circumstance. So those little areas of shot selection around the green and making the next shot easier than the one you just had. Right.
Well said. Jamie, what about you? Obviously, all of the golfers that sometimes we're dealing with typically have some different struggles with their game. What are some? Give us an example of something that you have found actually has a pretty easy fix that maybe we can help some of the golfers that are listening tonight.
Well, in addition to some of the things that have been said, which I certainly concur with, I would put a very big exclamation mark on balance. And what I mean by that is so many times you see golfers who maybe they lift and they sway off the ball, they lunge at the ball, right. They lift up, or they guys try to hit it really hard, and then they almost like rebound themselves back, and they're standing there completely out of position with no balance, and they're swearing, they're upset.
Right.
So, and I always tell my players that at any level really, but certainly, more the beginning and intermediate players, that probably the biggest difference between your average golfer out there and touring pros or low handicap golfers is balance. You just won't see really good players rebounding, jumping back off the ball, swaying, lifting, all these things. I mean, that's not their big issue, right? So, everybody may get a little bit out of balance, but I think that balance, when I like to have my players understand what it is and why having a stable stance is so important, being balanced at address, throughout the swing, top of the swing, impact, follow-through, standing there. And what one of my golfers, he was a doctor from Mexico City, he called it posa. The minute he hit a really great shot and he was standing there looking like a pro, he said, "Take my picture, I understand, posa." And, you'll hear that on TV. Oh, he's posing, she's posing. They like the shot. So balance is something we can work on when people understand it. And then you just can't talk yourself into having better balance. It actually takes certain muscles that allow us to have balance. So that's working on some of the big muscles in the legs and the hips and the glutes and the sacrospinalis muscles, the one that holds us up in the back, in our backs, some of the ab muscles. So we can work on balance muscles, and it turns out that has a wonderful effect in your general health and well-being. It can prevent falls and as we're getting older and in seniors. So I think balance is absolutely critical. People don't understand it well enough. They don't know how to achieve it, and they also don't know the physical exercises that can improve their chances of having the strength to have balance. And then the other part that goes in conjunction with that would be this negative self-talk. People really get down on themselves, and the minute they hit a bad shot, they've got a million excuses or a lot of blames, or they just sort of get upset, and then they're no good, and they're kind of shuffling to the next, or angrily moving on to the next shot, or fearfully moving on to the next shot. So I would say balance and negative self-talk are two things that really make a big difference, that I see a lot, having a lot of impact on the golf course, and that we can work on with people pretty readily.
Right. I would concur wholeheartly with everything that you just said, and as well as Chuck and Bill. I think there was some great answers. And, it varies, obviously, with individual students, as we all know. I mean, everybody has a different makeup, if you will, when they're out in the golf course. But generally we see some commonalities when we been doing this for a while, and you start to see a certain repetitiveness in certain areas. And, Jamie, as you pointed out, balance is a key issue. Obviously, if you're not in balance, all of the other pieces don't sort of fall into place. Bill, I'm going to flip it over to you now. We're going to start with you, and then Jamie and Chuck on this second to last question. And I'm not looking necessarily specifically in full detail here, but I just want to, because some people get confused with this. We're talking about bunker shots give a lot of amateurs difficulty. Does the technique between a fairway bunker and a greenside bunker differ? And if so, how? I think a lot of people, they watch on TV and they see, the pros that get into a greenside bunker, and they see them making all kinds of changes to the way they address the ball and so forth. And a lot of times, of course, when we see players hitting out of a fairway bunker, we don't always get the same angle. So they're not always clear, do I set up the same way? Is there a different technique? So maybe just briefly explain a little bit the difference between getting out of a fairway bunker as opposed to a greenside bunker. Or are there differences?
Yeah, I simply put to an amateur, and when I'm talking to players, it's the difference between hitting a ball thin and hitting a ball heavy. In a fairway bunker, we're literally trying to catch the ball first and catch it thin. Is a attitude or a way that we look at it. Whereas a greenside bunker, we're utilizing the bounce of the club, catching behind the ball, and moving the sand first to get the ball to come out high and soft. I mean, simply when I talk to players, gripping down a little bit on the club and catching the ball a little thin out of the fairway bunker, being a little more balanced and stable, with even the ball forward a little bit to catch the ball first and catch it thin, versus attacking the ball behind it with the bounce of the club to move the sand and pop the ball out greenside.
Yeah, and that's and see, this is a question that I get quite often with amateurs, particularly. Obviously, excuse me, as players get more developed and get a little bit more familiar within the sand, they understand the techniques in that. And obviously, there are variations, I think, that can be made either way. But generally, the rule of thumb is, obviously, in a fairway bunker, you're hitting, making connection with the ball first, and then obviously with a greenside bunker, you're trying to take some of that sand out and sort of lift the ball out, if you will. Jamie, I want to sort of ask that question in a slightly different way for you, just so that we don't make it too repetitive. But let's focus for a second, if you will, on the greenside bunker. And what I want to talk about is maybe you can just very briefly explain, and I know it's difficult when we don't have the visual ability here, but explain some of the key components to setting up to hitting a successful greenside bunker, because a lot of people I see I mean, I see all kinds of setups and approaches, and I see people leaning way over to the left and some people sitting way back and so on. So maybe just touch a little bit on that, setting up for a greenside bunker, what some of the key components to being successful for getting out of the sand.
Well, a few components are to take a wider stance so that you've got stability. And, we know that you kind of move your feet around so that you can dig in there. Having stability is really, really important. Some people talk about lining your feet up or trying to line the feet up a little left of the hole and then take the club outside. I think that's a little complicated for people. I think it's, have a wide, stable stance, and the backswing on a bunker shot tends to be steeper. It's just take it up, and then you're going to be able to drop it down and bounce the back of the club more easily on the sand. And so, that's a quicker action with the wrist as you were taking the club up. I think that's also important. And generally speaking, with most shots, unless you're on a kind of a downhill in a greenside bunker, to play the ball more forward in the stance is going to help pull off the club. Off the ball so that it'll get up over the lip of the bunker more easily. And a really nice practice that I think is terrific, and I've seen tour players warming up this way, is easy to remember, draw a line in the sand. So you take your club and just draw a line in the sand, and then you're standing, with your stance and dug in and straddling it, and practice that quicker, more steep, steeper backswing, and dropping and bouncing the club just a little bit behind that line, an inch or two, and bouncing the club and having a follow through, and then just kind of inch your way up so that you keep practicing dropping the club just in that spot. If you've picked an inch behind the line that you've drawn, and so in that way you're really practicing the eye-hand coordination and having the club consistently land about an inch behind where the ball would be. After you've done a whole bunch of those, put a ball down and just try to repeat that same motion. The ball will fly out on the sand, not by hitting the ball. Of course, the greenside bunker, as we talked about, is more hitting the ball. You don't want to get stuck in the sand. You're looking for some distance. But this draw the line in the sand practice is probably the best one I know to develop that kind of coordination and consistent entry and bounce of the club through the sand, so that you can really develop that nice, that special sound and feel that we have when there's a good sand shot in a greenside bunker.
Well said. Chuck, again, I'm going to alter it just a little bit for you. Obviously, something that we see a lot on TV as well, with a lot of professionals, is the ability to be able to stop the ball. And I know it's not always easy, especially with the greenside bunker, because you're coming out on sand. You can't really impart the same backswing that you normally would with a golf club. But we have seen some players over the years, a lot of professionals that had an ability to be able to get out of the sand and actually put a little bit of check on the ball. Explain a little bit how they're doing that. A lot of golf amateurs ask that question all the time.
Yeah, so first, as an amateur, you should never, ever attempt to do that because you have to hit closer.
Wait a minute. What
closer to the golf ball.
What are you saying we can't?
I'm saying that most amateurs will do one or two things. They chunk it and leave it in the bunker, or they blade it over the green. So when you see those guys and gals spinning it out of the bunker, they're not hitting 2 inches behind the golf ball. They're hitting slightly behind the ball. Not quite like a fairway shot, because you're trying to hit a fairway bunker. You're trying to hit ball first, as Bill said. They're still trying to hit the sand first. They're just trying to hit it much closer to the golf ball. And they have much better control over their golf club than the amateurs. So when you're in the bunker, like for instance, we have fluffy sand here in Florida. So with fluffy sand, you need more bounce and you play the ball more forward. If you're in part of the country where they have firm sand, you need less bounce and you play the ball farther back. Because if you try to play it forward, it's going to hit the ground, skull right into the golf ball. Hit the sand, I should say, the firm sand, skull right into the ball. But
Right.
the advice I give most amateurs, I go, look, this bunker is designed to be a stroke and a half penalty. That's how the architects design it. It's up to you whether it's going to be more than that. So don't try to hold this. Your first job is just get it on the green so you have the opportunity to try and make a putt. Once you are pretty consistent with getting out of it, then start taking a little better aim. Another thing that most amateurs do is they will use the same wedge, no matter if they've got 10 yards to the back left pin, and it's a front right bunker, or if it's just setting over the lip, they use the same club. And the touring pros don't. They'll even hit it with a pitching wedge, depending on how far back how far back and away that pin is. So they might use a 60, they might use a gap, they might use a 56, they might use a pitching wedge. So I've seen Gary Player hit a 3-iron out of the bunker to a real up close to him tucked pin, just over a ridge. So we're not all going to be Gary Player or Seve. So the first rule is get out of the bunker, and get it on the green.
Well said, and that's a great point. And something else too, since you mentioned Seve, I remember years ago, I think it was in Golf Digest that I read this, but Seve used to actually go to the beach and hit balls out of the sand. And we've got some great beaches here in Florida. So I certainly don't want to suggest that people need to be going down to the beach and start hitting golf balls, but maybe if you find a little isolated spot somewhere. Great answers, guys. I had a question here that I wanted to pose to each of you at the end of the discussion, and I thought this was sort of apropos considering we just finished up the Ryder Cup, and unfortunately, as most of you tuning in tonight know, Team USA, of course, did not manage to steal the cup away from Team Europe. So I'm going to start sort of at the top again. Chuck, I know you just spoke, but I want each of you just to sort of give your quick thoughts on this. But my final question is more of an observation. In the past weekend's Ryder Cup, of course, Team Europe clearly dominated in their matches. It was, no bones about it. In your thoughts and opinion, what should Team USA take away from the experience, and what can they learn from Team Europe's style of play? That's for you, Chuck, and then Bill, and then Jamie.
The Europeans have always been united as one. They've always had fun. They hang out together. I mean, they do a lot of things together. The biggest thing is in Europe, you don't learn playing golf, playing stroke play. You learn match play, and you learn 9-hole match play events. You play very little stroke play as a junior or growing up in Europe. It's a lot of match play. We don't do that over here. We do a lot of stroke play. So that's two big advantages they have. And I think you can look through back all of our successes and all of our failures as a team, and at the end of the day, the coaches, the coach coaches, and the players have to play. One thing I noticed was all of our guys looked like they were just flat worn out. I mean, they looked like they'd been through the ringer. They had no energy. It didn't seem to affect the Europeans, but it sure affected the U.S. players. But again, at the end of the day, our teams don't seem to have the camaraderie that the Europeans have. Our teams, U.S. players learn to play the game differently than the Europeans do. The Europeans learn how to play in the wind and hit those low-flighted shots. They learn how to play match play. They don't worry if they make an 8. Being in a match play, they're just one down or whatever. They don't worry about that. And we seem to, when we get 1 or 2 down, we start pressing, and there's a lot of holes left. So I just think it's a difference in the two cultures, basically, and basically how the teams interact with each other.
Yeah, some great points, and I remember a number of years ago. This is several years ago now. Excuse me, and I remember that last point that you had mentioned about really how the players interact with one another. I know that was a criticism for Team USA years back, and I'm surprised that that's still becoming an issue, because I remember, and I forget who was the captain that year. It escapes me at the time, but I remember they actually tried to do some things to create more of a bonding effect, and it really it didn't seem to get the same results. Bill, what about you? I mean, the other thing I want to throw in here and get you to comment a little bit about, so we're not getting too repetitive. There are a lot of players I've noticed, and God love 'em, I love watching Tiger and Phil and that, but there are just some players that don't have a good Ryder Cup record. Some of the other guys that have been on there in the past have always had pretty good matches, but these two really don't have the greatest of match play. Maybe they're just not suited. Should future captains consider a little bit more carefully on Team USA who they bring in? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that a bit, Ted, but it really comes down to, when I see this, they're complaining about the setup of the course and this or that. You hit fairways, you make putts. And our squad did not hit fairways and did not make putts. It's as simple as that. Everybody's talking about rolling the golf ball back. It doesn't care if you hit it 800 miles. If you're not hitting the fairways and you're not making putts, you're not going to win. It's playing golf. We can talk about match play versus this is playing golf. I make 3, you make 4, I win. And that's really what it comes down to. I think we lose sight of that an awful lot on our squad and the way we're going. And I just don't think sometimes the hot player, this player, that player, everybody was so up with DeChambeau coming in, and he laid a big rotten goose egg. I mean, same with Tiger, same with Phil. When it comes right down to it, I mean, it was a stinky egg that all 3 of those players laid. Fortunately, Finau did play very good, but it comes down to it. I make 3, you make 4, I win, you lose. Yeah. We don't hit fairways. Yeah. We don't make putts. It really, when it simply comes down to that, and to do both of those, you have to be playing light and loose and have a mindset that that's what you're going to do. And I really don't see it happening that way. You can go strategizing and whatever. I like Azinger's pod system. I think that was the best way to go about doing it. And we've left that. We have task force about this. We have task force about that. You don't hit fairways. You don't make putts. You don't win. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point as well. Jamie, to round out your thoughts on this, are the players and even the coaches maybe making too much, maybe trying to strategize, if you will, too much, and maybe it just needs to be more simple. Let's get the ball in the fairway and let's make some more putts. What are your thoughts on what Team USA should take away from last weekend's Ryder Cup?
Well, I think the thing that needs to be more simple is to kind of get out of their heads and to get more into their hearts. And what I mean by that is this, that when we talk about camaraderie, when you look at the Europeans, they're having fun, they have the love, shall we say, and it's just natural. I mean, the Americans have tried to make pod systems and this and that. In 2016, when the Americans actually did come back and win, what they said was, we were a family. And so when there's more of that feeling, I mean, they're all great golfers. Come on. I mean, look at their world rankings, look at their records. I mean, they're major champions. They're amazing. But who can get out there and perform and get the ball in the fairway and get the ball rolling in the hole? That's not about better technique. That's not about better strategy. That's about, in my opinion, their state of mind, their state of being. And what I also mean by that is I speak to CEO groups a lot and work with companies around their team culture. It turns out that there are 3 H's that are extremely important to peak performance. One is health. It's kind of obvious. We're not going to talk about that. The other 2 are happiness and harmony. It turns out that people perform better, they do their jobs better, they play golf better, which when that's your job, when they're happy. It's not that you get happy at the end. It's a way to get there. There's a natural energy and a relaxation and a joy and a positive I can do attitude when people are happy. And we saw all the unhappiness at Ascension. We're hearing all these stories from the days before the Ryder Cup ever started between Patrick Reed and Jordan Spieth, or maybe Dustin Johnson and Bruce Koepka, whatever. This was like there was a lack of the happiness, and the other H is harmony. Lack of harmony, lack of happiness right off the bat. These things aren't, new age or something like that. They're not soft skills. Harmony is needed in a great football team or great football play. You have a broken play when there's a lack of harmony. You score when there's harmony. When there's harmony in the golf swing, and when there's harmony in the family. When there's harmony in a corporation or in a working group at work. In a business setting. So I think that that's really what we're lacking, and that the Europeans have so much more of. Interestingly, in 2014, when the Americans also played very poorly and lost after the 2012 great collapse, what happened then? You had a great team captain, who was Tom Watson, and you had Phil Mickelson publicly criticizing him in the press. So when there's that kind of, some kind of rancor, that sort of disharmony, that lack of love or camaraderie,
right,
people just don't perform as well. So these are principles of peak performance. And I think that the Americans go in the direction of strategy, and it's a head thing, and it's a strategy thing, and all of that, without addressing those kinds of fundamentals to peak team performance, individual performance and team performance. The Europeans are long on that. The Americans are very short on it. And we saw that from even before anybody got out on the golf course. As much as they try to kind of create that team family feeling, the Americans just start out in a deficit compared to the Europeans.
Yeah, and that is so true. That is a great point that you make as well. I think all three of them were some great points. And something else too that I've noticed, and I'm looking back, through my mind and looking at some previous, Ryder Cup events, and I'll tell you something that I remember, and I believe it was at Kiawah Island when they played. And again, if my memory might be a little foggy, so forgive me, but the late Payne Stewart, I believe, was playing. Something that Payne Stewart had, and I think Team USA really needs this, is he was not only a great player and just a good human being, but he was a great cheerleader. I mean, he would be on that side, whether he was in or out of a match, and he would just be like, and I don't even know how to explain it, but he would just be there. I remember when he won, the U.S. Open, and Phil Mickelson lost, and of course Phil was having, he and his wife Amy were having a child. That famous line that Payne said to him at the end, you're going to be a father. He just always seemed to have a way of sort of uniting that, and I think that's really what Team USA needs is. Yeah, it needs a great leader and its coach, but I think it needs somebody out there just really getting everybody else fired up. I mean, I remember many times when Seve Ballesteros, even though he was captaining, I mean, he just had so much passion and energy in his play, and also in his, on the side, that he just knew how to get everybody charged up. And I just think that that's something I've noticed, and Bill, I think you had said this, we saw some sort of sour looks. There's a photo circulating around, of course, of Tiger, and you can just tell by looking at his face that he's obviously, I'm sure, disgusted in his own play. But it just, you can tell that there's just not that happy emotion behind it. So, and nobody likes to lose, but sometimes you just have to have that positive energy coming in to an event first, and it's not just about rank and file. So, great discussion, guys. I'm going to give you each just a quick moment. Jamie, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll go backwards. Bill, and then Chuck, finish off. Thank you again for joining tonight on the Coach's Corner panel. But also, I want to give you guys an opportunity to reach out to the folks listening, how they can get a hold of you. Jamie, you go ahead. Ladies first. Nope. Not sure. Jamie, did you hear that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute. Pardon me. I said, first of all, thank you. Thank you for all these great questions, and kind of moving around in golf was great, and to get everybody's perspectives was really wonderful. So thank you for that. People can reach me at www.kiaigolf.com, Kiai golf. PI is about harmony. It's about when everything's connected and moving, from that place. So kiaigolf.com. They can write to me at Jamie, Jamie, at kiaigolf.com. And you can always call me and then leave a message on my voicemail. I do get them, and that's 760-492-GOLF, 4653. So, and I do long distance Skype lessons. I do in-person lessons and clinics. I travel quite a bit, and so do golf schools. We can always arrange to do some really great events. I also do corporate events and business and golf and peak performance kinds of training. So happy to hear from folks, and just thank you always for the opportunity to share about this game we love so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jamie, as always. Bill, update quickly, and where can the folks reach out to you?
Yeah, you can always find me at BillAbramsGolf.com is my website. My winter location, which I'm going to be here about the 1st of November, is Grand Palms Resort in Pembroke Pines is my home base. I'm also coaching at Gateway Country Club with Dave Impastato Golf Channel Academy there in Fort Myers, Florida, on the west coast of Florida, as well as Balmoral Woods in the summer months. I also have with Blast Motion, I do lessons remotely with video and with sensors. So please look forward to seeing everybody. Give me a call and get in touch. Thanks again for having us, as always, Ted.
I appreciate it. And thank you, by the way. Bill reached out to me a little over a week ago and introduced me to a great referral network, alignable.com. And I'll tell you, I've already had some great responses. Of course, it's a great way to network, not only in your local area, but obviously all across the United States and around. So thank you, Bill, for that invitation. I really appreciate it. I always like to find some great ways. And also thank you for the great recommendation. Chuck, last but not least, Chuck, how can we find you?
You can go to my website, chuckevansgolf.com. My phone number, email is on there. I'm on all the social media, just, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as Chuck Evans. So pretty easy to find. You just got to remember the name. But we do we do schools, traveling schools. We also do online coaching as well, corporate clinics, corporate outings. Anything that's remotely related to golf, we do. So. But you can find all the information on the website.
Perfect. And thank you, Chuck, as well, for that great recommendation as well on alignable.com. Of course, I reached out to a lot of not only my fellow pros, but business associates through all different types of social media. And, of course, we started connecting here over this last week or so. And both you and Bill were very generous in posting a great recommendation to me, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you as well, Chuck. All right, guys. Well, great Coach's Corner panel. I've got to let you guys go and go and relax for the evening. You've had a busy day, and you had a great evening here on the panel. So thank you. Until next time.
Okay, thank you. See you guys.
Thanks so much for having us, Ted.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was my very special guest on the Coach's Corner panel, Chuck Evans, Bill Abrams, and, of course, Jamie Leno-Zimron. Always do a fantastic job. And I want to also thank the new sponsor on the show, golfswing.com. Here's a little message from them. Take a listen.
Are you finally ready to improve your golf game? Golfswing.com is changing the way golfers learn online. With the largest collection of golf training programs and drills on the planet, Golfswing.com can help you improve every part of your game. Whether you want to gain more distance, hit it closer, or just sink more putts, Golfswing.com's staff of world-class coaches can help you gain the results you need. Watch unlimited videos on any device from anywhere in the world and start playing better, scoring lower, having more fun, and saving money. Get your fix on demand at golfswing.com.
All right, that was from our new sponsor in the Coach's Corner panel, golfswing.com. Thank you guys for your support in the show, and I look forward to developing a very long relationship with you guys. But thank you for reaching out, and very excited to have you guys on this very first show here together. All right, I've got a very special guest coming up here, and she's very patiently waiting in the wings. So let me just tell you just a little bit about her, and then I want to bring her on. Her name is Yvette Pegues. She is the Chief Transformation Officer of Your Invisible Disability Group. She's also a thought leader of the 4-4 signature program, Pillars process for newly disabled and diagnosed persons exclusively, synopsized in her training workbook, The Art of Adaptability. She also co-authored My Mommy Had Brain Surgery and I'm Okay with her sons when they were 7 and 5 years old, in an effort to stop bullying and turn their storms to stories. And yes, she's also a wheelchair golfer. She was on the Women of Golf show several months ago with my good friend and co-host LPGA professional Cindy Miller, and she joined some other great guests, Gianna Rojas, of course, who is the one-handed lady golfer, who's a good friend of mine as well, and part of the adaptive golfers community. We're going to talk a little bit about Yvette's journey first off, and then we're going to sort of morph, if you will, into some of the things that she's doing to help some of the adaptive folks out there, and also a little bit about golf as well and how she's doing with that. So let me welcome my very special guest, Yvette the guest. Yvette, how are you doing?
Doing just great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm chuckling a little bit. I've got to do something about the time difference. I keep forgetting that people are on different coasts and different time zones, and I'm snickering a little bit because I know you'd called in a little bit earlier. We got a mix-up on the time, so that's my fault, so my apology. But I'm glad you were able to correct that and make it back for the second half. So welcome to the show. And one of the reasons, Yvette, I wanted to have you, as I mentioned just to the folks, even though you were on another show that I do Tuesday mornings, obviously you were sharing the mic, if you will, with some of the other guests. And I wanted to give you a little bit more time on your own because you have a very unique story, and I'd like you to share a little bit. So let's go back a little bit and maybe just share a little bit about your background and how things came about to where they are today.
Sure. I'm not sure how far back you'd like me to go, but I can tell you that somewhere around 6 to 7 years ago, I could say I was in a totally different place, corporate network systems engineer for IBM, traveling about 90%, and relatively newly married, 2 small kids. Ended up going back to school after getting my engineering degree to get an education degree. Being a left brain logic engineer, I thought I had to go to school to be a good mommy. And after graduating with a totally different degree that used a totally different side of my brain, I became an educator and went off to Haiti, after the earthquake, hoping that I can help in that mission trip. And at the same time, I had this great opportunity to take advantage of this incredible, fully funded PhD program at Harvard. So I graduated with an education degree in the top of my class and was now being looked at for this opportunity just about 6 weeks to 3 months before the opportunity was available to me. I suffered a traumatic brain and spinal cord injury. The brain injury ended up being something that was genetically in me since birth. It had remained dormant, presented itself through some paralysis, went into brain surgery. Obvious pressure was in my head, and it had to be removed, if you will, and they needed to do brain surgery for that. Walked in and never walked back out. So a result of that, obviously, is losing my job, losing my ability to speak, to walk, and to talk. And in addition to that, I found out that I also lost executive function. So it took several years for me to recover, but obviously that scholarship was no longer available. My IQ dropped substantially, so I'll probably never be another Harvard candidate. But I have this executive function that I'm working on restoring, and finally, I have this emotional intelligence, which makes me almost a totally different person, like a social animal, which I could have never been as an engineer.
Right. And what's interesting about your story is you not only, and this is really what impressed me when you were on the other show earlier in the year, is, you were dealt a very rough hand, to say the least. But yet, rather than, sort of just withering away and kind of feeling sorry for yourself, and I'm sure there were moments when you struggled with your emotions, anybody would, you chose to rise above it and get out there and do something. And even though you had to make some drastic changes, you actually went out there and sort of tackled it, and you're still obviously dealing with some day-to-day struggles and weekly struggles and that, but you chose not to let it put you down. You decided to use it as an opportunity to educate others that maybe are suffering through some of the things that you might be suffering through. So let me say this, and I want to get to one of the first books here. And thank you, by the way, Yvette, you sent me a copy of both of the books. We're going to talk about them here a little bit. The first one that I want to talk about is My Mommy Had Brain Surgery and I'm Okay. And, of course, you wrote that book, or co-wrote that book, if you will, with your two sons, Isaiah and Elijah. Why did you feel it was necessary, first off, to write the book, and why did you want to include them in the process?
Well, Ted, I'm glad you asked that question because it wasn't even my idea, really. It was my children's idea. And ironically, still had my engineer brain. I don't know that would have been something I was open to, but as my more recently educated teacher brain, it made sense to take their temperature on a regular basis. And so when they told me they were being called Wheelchair Boy or Mr. Wheelchair USA because of my pageants,
right.
And, people were saying things like, why does your mommy have wheels and my mommy have feet? Right. They actually came home and said, hey, Mom, our life's not that bad. Like, why does everybody think we have this horrible life? We love our lives. And how can we let them know and share it? And for me, I just said, tell the story the best way you can. And they felt like writing it would be great, that they can share it with people. And I helped walk them through that. So ironically, it was their idea, and they needed me to help support them through it. And I'm doing this newly disabled. So, my husband joined in. We prayed a lot. Our faith played a big part of it. And now they use that book for two reasons. One, they use it as their college fund. They are now 10 and 12, and they're excited about having this source of income that's going to guarantee that they're going to have a college education, which, by the way, puts me as first gen. So neither one of my parents could read or write, not to mention go to school or complete school. So I'm first generation high school and college. So for my kids to already have their college fund up and running at such a young age and to know that they're contributing personally was really exciting. I just wanted to give them something they could touch, something that they can express themselves and go back to if ever they were bullied about their mommy.
Right. And, what a lot of people, obviously, I think, as we start to understand the different changes happening in society and that, obviously kids at that age, they don't understand, the teasing and so forth. They don't realize the impact it has. And what I found very interesting about the book is that you address a lot of things like, help people to, especially kids, to understand some general questions. I'm just going to read out a few of them here. But, first off, what is the brain? A lot of kids, obviously, at that age don't really understand. They've heard it. They've heard that word before, and they kind of have a little bit of an idea. But you've basically done the book in such a way that even at a very elementary level, a child can pick up this book and certainly get some general answers to questions they might have and might not understand. And it can help them initiate a conversation with their parents about some things that maybe they don't understand. So I see that the definite benefit that it offers for parents to be able to educate with their children.
That was exciting for us because, ironically, as we went to self-publish this book, there was no book within their age group
right.
that was a true-to-life book, right? Not fiction, right? But a book that really talks about something real in their age group. To think that your brain controls your entire body, yet there's no private or independent book for children, right? Written for children, for kids, by kids, that talk about the brain and talk about how to talk about
right.
it. And really helped us to talk about it and talk through it as we were writing it. Because I was a scribe for the most part. I was like, what would you like people to know? What were some of the things that you had to do that you liked or that you didn't like? And the great thing about it is, even though it does talk about the brain and that it's written by kids for kids, it's not just for children with parents with brain injuries. It really talks about disability and a voice that a part of the family who is more often missed can actually be heard. I wanted them to be heard, not just in our household, but wherever they went. So being able to turn bullying into a book in retrospect, seems really smart, but I wasn't as smart about it at the time. It just really worked out that my kids were smart at the time.
Yeah, and also too, there's a reason, folks, for those of you tuning into the show tonight, why I wanted to have this conversation. And obviously, we're going to talk a little bit. Obviously, this is a golf show, so we're going to talk a little bit about golf, of course, too. But I think it's very, very important, and I want to read something out very quickly here. And I think it was brought out a number of times. But as I mentioned earlier, you were on the other program, Women of Golf, with another guest panel, and Gianna Rojas, of course, as I mentioned, has been a guest of mine a number of times. And one of the interesting stats that she brought to the table was based on a study that the University of Clemson had done. And it was based on numbers and that of how many people fall into this category. And it can be from a variety of sources. It could be somebody such as yourself that maybe has suffered a traumatic brain injury, or it could be something that has been like this from birth, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different categories. But when she read out the numbers and gave me an idea of how many people fall into this category, it was staggering. It was, again, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but it was around the 22 to 24 million individuals in the United States of various ages, and that includes also certainly not everyone, but some of our veterans and things like that through PTSD and PSTD, and other areas of disabilities. And what I found very interesting, and through some of the conversations, Yvette, that I've had with Gianna, is that this is an area, group, if you will, that really the golf industry has ignored. But yet, there's a lot of individuals within that group that probably would love to play golf or learn to play golf, but don't feel that it's an option for them because they don't see anybody like them or maybe has the same experiences out there playing. So they're not really pursuing. And this is why, I know that Gianna has approached you and vice versa to really help in that community. So in addition to writing the book and educating about some of the issues that you're dealing with, you're also reaching out within the disabled group community and showing them, just because I now have a situation in my life that has changed doesn't mean I have to stop doing what I'm doing. Some things perhaps, but doesn't mean I can't pursue other things. So talk a little bit about that. How did that relationship come to play with you and the adaptive golf community?
It's an interesting story, Ted. That Clemson University study found that 10% of people with some disability now play golf today. 22% of those with disabilities played golf before they had their disability, but don't play today because they don't know that it's something that's available to them. And then 35% of those individuals with disabilities are currently not playing golf, but are interested in learning. I fell within that category, but not so much that I would pursue it. The way that it came into my court, if you will, was through the PGA, surprisingly. So I got on social media after my brain injury to help support others. I found it very therapeutic to share my story and to be able to see myself through the eyes of others and support those who had questions and challenged me to do things that maybe they've always wanted to do or didn't think I could do. So PGA contacted me based on my social media presence as Miss Wheelchair USA. And I was on social media. I was doing a lot of really fun things, and they contacted me asking me to support their effort to have people of color, to have women, and to have those with disabilities to look at golf as an athletic option. And health and wellness was kind of the motivator for me, because being sedentary 99% of the time, I needed to move my body. And golf didn't feel like a sport that would move me per se, but because of the different equipment that they have available today, I can actually be elevated at about a 45-degree angle on equipment, or even a 90-degree angle. So it's a paragolfer and different equipment that they have out there. So when they came to me and said, hey, Yvette, we'd like you to try our Get Golf Ready program, we'll teach you in Bay at a PGA Tour Superstore so that you can get comfortable, but we want you to be in a multi-ability group of women who, just like you, would like to learn more about golf. And so from the age of 17 to 77, we had about 6 or 7 women learning to play golf. I was the only one using a paragolfer inside of the PGA Tour Superstore near my home. And so what we were trying to do was to make sure there was a directory that showed me where to go and which golf professionals were trained to teach me in my current position, to meet me where I was. And at that particular store, there was an actual coach there who I didn't know at the time also had a disability, and he did have some mobility challenges, and he was able to walk me through playing golf. And it was a 6-series training, and on training number 6, I actually got to go out to a real golf course on a beautiful day and hit my first golf ball on the course. And obviously PGA came down, they had their cameras, I did some interviews and some photo shoots, and then when they left, I really got to play golf, and they said, we want you to show up at the CNN building tomorrow in Atlanta. HLN wants to interview you. I know it's short notice, but we're really excited about what you're doing, and we want to televise it. So the next day it was televised. My coach and I were on the show, and then, I think it was right around the Olympics, a couple months later, I was in PGA Magazine, and I've been playing ever since.
Fantastic. And, to me, somebody that's in the, in the golf industry, that's exciting to me because I want for everybody, regardless of what their ability is, to be able to have access and learn, and whether you have to have some sort of paramobility vehicle or assistance, or whether it might be somebody like Gianna Rojas, who has an issue with her hand. She often has expressed about some of the stories, and I know she shared one a couple times on my shows, where a young girl who has the same adaptability challenges that Gianna has actually saw a video of her talking about playing golf, and this young girl, of course, had an interest there, but didn't think there was anybody that sort of fit in her group, if you will, doing that. So she actually reached out to Gianna, and I'm sure you're probably more familiar with the story than I am. But there's just one example. So it's about, as you put it, it's about education and really reaching out to all communities and saying, hey, this is something. It's not only a game that can be fun and obviously has some challenges, but it's a game that's inclusive regardless of what your abilities may be. And it's a game of a lifetime. I mean, there's people, as you said, that into their 70s, 80s, and beyond that are playing this game. And regardless of what version you may have to play based on your abilities, it's still about being part of that much bigger group. And I think the fact that the awareness that yourself and others are bringing, I think, is a win-win for everybody. And I'm very honored and proud for you, and well as the others that are in that group for reaching out and taking the time. And it just goes to show that no matter what your circumstances in life may present you with, that you never stop living life. And I think you've done a fantastic job, and that's one of the reasons, as I said, I wanted to have you back on this show to spend a little bit more time with me on your own. So thank you, Yvette, for what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about your other book, The Art of Adaptability. And this explains to me what the 4 fours, what that means for those of us that maybe aren't familiar. Talk a little bit about this book. What was the purpose behind putting this book together? But first, explain to me what the 4 fours, what that term means, what you're talking about.
So, obviously, I wasn't expecting disability, and I didn't have experience with disability, and we spent the first 2 years of my recovery trying to figure out how to live through this, if that makes any sense. And what I found was if I knew better, I would do better, and I needed to, if you will, document my experience to share with others. I hadn't thought about writing a book until I realized that there's 4 specific areas that we need to discuss when someone gets a diagnosis or has a specific disability that limits their mobility and changes their life. The first 4, which is just 4 just different steps, is to basically understand, like, who are you? As simple and basic as that sounds, what I spent the first year, if you will, doing was getting talked off of a ledge every single time I went to the doctor's office. And so what happens is if he only has 5 minutes to talk with me, he has to give me the worst case scenario so he's not held liable for telling me what the possibilities are. And what that did was it changed who I was every single time. So what I needed to be able to do and what I shared with others is make sure you are covered in the area of your identity. Who are you? Make sure you know who you are, that you're comfortable with who you are. And in my case, I actually had a card that told me what I did, the things I was proud of, my kids, and all the other things that I needed to remember that no matter what happens when I leave this appointment, I am still a vet. I am still an engineer. I'm still a mother of 2 amazing children and a wife. And that my faith will get me through this. And the identity part of it seems so simple, but in that state, you're so, vulnerable that you don't always know where to go and what to do. So the first 4 was, who are you? Make sure that you're always confident about who you are, know who you are, write it down if you have to, and get a tattoo, but know who you are at all times. So that was the first 4, and that's the reflection exercise that you might see in the book. And then, the second one is, the first one, 4-1, is for you, right? And 4-2 is your family, right? It's for your family. In my case, it was just my husband. He was the only caregiver that I had, and I needed to make sure he had respite, that he wasn't working so hard to take care of me that he didn't burn out, but also to make sure that I had the support that I needed based on the prognosis that I was given. I needed to make sure, do I need to leave? Do I need to go to another state where I have more families? I need to make sure that my home life and my support system was in place, get my friends and family in place. Again, it sounds simple, but these are the things that get missed, and they're not the things that the doctor will discuss with you, right? And so that's the second 4, right? And the third 4 is for now, forever, or for how long. So in my case, I did not have a clear prognosis. They weren't expecting me to have a spinal seizure or spinal difficulties during the surgery. So I didn't know if I needed to have respite care forever, for a short period of time. Did I need to bring in a third person to help care for my child? Like, I needed to be able to be fair enough to my family to let them know how long I would need their help and support, because they have the right to make the decision as to how long they're going to be involved in my recovery, if at all. And that's the same thing that I share when I volunteer, And then finally, the fourth 4 is healing what's broken. I spent a lot of time trying to be who I was, and it was tormenting. Having to think that I've lost so much and that I no longer existed as I knew myself to be was more depressing than the diagnosis itself. And that's why I got up. That's why I got up when my then 7-year-old son asked his teacher, was his mommy going to die? He had never seen me horizontal for long periods of time, so he got worried. He said, my mom is not getting out of bed. He didn't really care or even concern himself with the fact that I had surgery. He just wanted his mommy back. And so I had to make a decision in that moment to tie myself upright in my chair and make sure that when he came home from school that I didn't look like I was in a fog, and that I was present, and that I was willing to work harder for him than I was willing to work for myself. So we need to make sure that we understand that what doesn't mean it can't be fixed. It doesn't mean that it can't be repaired or replaced. And I was able to put the old Yvette behind me and actually do a lot more activities as the, quote, new Yvette than I ever did. as the walking
right.
Yvette. And so those are the 4 4s, and I just think that as we go through these 4 4s as an initial opportunity, not just for the family, friends, loved ones, and individual with a disability, but also in the workplace. Because we have these workplace leaders who are saying we're open for diversity, disability, and difference, but the culture is not cultivated, and no one else knows that HR is bringing in this whole new motley crew of individuals that look, act, and behave differently, and then that ends up being a risk to the organization because they're bringing people in and the culture doesn't really fit their vision for the organization. So this book also works as a workshop for corporate organizations who are trying to cultivate their culture to invite and prepare themselves for disability and difference. And here's the last reason why that's so important. 4 out of every 6 individuals have a visible or an invisible disability. We're talking about accidents, we're talking about illnesses, we're talking about injury, and we're also talking about aging. So when you think about that population and that it's the largest people group in the country, and oh, by the way, it's an $8 trillion with the T, Ted, dollar industry.
Yeah.
So when you say that they're missing out, you're absolutely correct, because not just as organizations who are looking for that fiduciary cap, but you're also talking about employees who are looking to invite amazing diversity of thought and diversity of ideas and skill sets into the workplace. And the loyalty, I have to just brag about that a little bit, because there's a 40% unemployment rate about people with disabilities. We're at the 40% mark because people just assume that because we're disabled, we probably won't be good employees. But because we are so grateful and we're so good at what we're good at, that the loyalty is there. The retention is almost a win-win, if you will. Bring someone in who's willing to do the work and stick with the company because of, the fact that you have a workplace that's diverse.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. You're exactly right. And I think a lot of it, and as I mentioned a few moments back, I think a lot of it really stems, Yvette, with education. I think, I've looked through the book. Obviously, I've only had it for a little while, so I haven't had a chance to go through everything. But it's very well put together. And as you say, it's a great workbook, certainly for an HR department. But it's also great for even in the education system for helping people understand exactly what many of the people in this particular group are dealing with. And there's a lot of questions, and certainly, we're not going to be able to answer them all the time. It takes time, and we'll continue learning new things as we go along. But I think as a society, you're exactly right. There is a large population, and that's just, what we talked about, some of the stats you read out earlier, and the one that I threw in there. That's just talking about the United States. We're not even looking now in a global sense. So that number and those numbers are certainly much larger globally. So it's a huge segment of the population. And I want to just quickly go back to golf real quick. The industry spends, millions and millions of dollars on advertising and promoting the latest, greatest equipment. And, it's exciting. It's interesting for those of us, in the golf industry. But as Gianna, and I keep using her as an example because some of the discussions that we've had, both on and off the show, were very, very intriguing. She's used a lot of different equipment. I'm talking about clubs and things like that. She's tried them and actually found some that worked very well with her circumstance. And what's interesting is this is just a club that just by happenstance happens to work well for her. Now, it may not necessarily work for everybody that falls into this group, but there is a great opportunity for that business to reach out to this community and say, we've developed something, or we can continue to develop further products that can be used by individuals that fall into this disability group. And, the products are already in place. And I think there's a great opportunity for the industry to educate themselves and to, if they want to develop something, quit developing a driver that claims to hit 400 yards, develop some equipment that can be used by somebody that has some adaptability challenges, now you're talking about developing a product that is worth something, in my opinion. Because, I mean, everybody can claim they can hit further and put more spin and do all this kind of stuff, but if the person doesn't know how to use the equipment, it's not going to matter, a hill of beans. But if somebody can put their minds and thoughts together to develop something that can be used by another segment of the population that isn't being addressed, that to me is a win-win situation, because then they're going to start drawing people that normally, don't have an interest in golf. Now they're going to say, hey, these guys have got something for me too, right?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And I love that you're using Gianna as an example because she's good. She is amazing.
Oh, I know.
I don't know if you've ever played golf with her, but she uses that one hand better than most golfers I've played against. So she's taught me quite a bit. And again, if we can talk about her a little longer, she just wanted to be with her husband. She just wanted to hang with him and play golf because she likes golf, and that's really what happens. It becomes generational. My kids are now playing golf. They might not have ever played golf had I not been introduced. So you have the Solo Rider, which can be used for any mobility challenge or not, because it's simply an accessible golf cart that is hand-driven. And the great thing about it is I can swing my legs out, but I have used men's clubs because they're longer. I'm coming from a longer distance if I'm in a Solo Rider, and if I'm in a para-golfer, I'm further away from the ground, so the longer clubs work better for me. Now, I don't know if the manufacturers of this equipment outside of the Solo Rider and the para-golfer know that we're using their clubs, but the interest is enough to do exactly what you said could be done. And I think you look at golf almost as a niche, right? You almost have this target audience that you expect to play golf. And, maybe major Fortune 100 companies, you expect that they're going to have an employee resource group or at least upper management coming to their favorite golf course on a regular basis for meetings. But have you ever stopped to think that there are individuals within your organization or your employee resource group for people with disabilities that can get on that golf course with you? I am encouraging large companies to sponsor some of this equipment at their favorite golf course so that you can now invite these individuals onto the course. And we're also very excited about the PGA and the PGA Tour Superstore training more people like Tim Wilkes, who was my coach, to get out there and learn to train people with disabilities. Because, see, I wouldn't know what to look for. I don't know what I don't know. But Tim Wilkes, being a professional golfer, can say, these are the adaptations we can make with what we have already. And he could take some of those hacks, those adaptive golf hacks, back to the manufacturer and show the interest and show more of a micro niche. So the niche is great. I think it's been, matured over time, but the micro niche is what they're missing. They're missing the part of their existing niche to make it even tighter, closer, and more directed, because only maybe 15% of disabilities today are visible. There's 85% of disabilities that are invisible. So you have, our war heroes coming back, with the prosthetics, or the PTSD, or, like Gianna with the one hand and the missing fingers. You just have as many different variations in disability as you have fingerprints. So I agree that it's a market that isn't being challenged enough. But what is being done, and I don't know if you know this or not, but it's being looked at as an Olympic sport, a Paralympic sport. So, once it gets to the Paralympics, it'll be too late for people to get in on it, right? So I highly recommend, that the USAGA, which is the United States Adaptive Golf Alliance, that you connect with them not only, to play socially, right, and recreationally, find a golf course nearby that has already been vetted and that already has PGA-trained professionals to help you in your adaptive golf, but also has access to some of this equipment so that when you get there, you're well received. Because I have some stories of my own where I've had to roll into, a golf course and say, I'm going to play. I know this is scary for you, but I promise I'm not contagious, and I'm here to play. And I will do 9 holes if I have but I'm playing today, and I want to be in this tournament. I want to be able to raise money for whatever cause this is today, and I want you to watch me and tell me what you think afterwards. So, yeah, it's been a difficult road, but Gianni and I fortunately have strong enough personalities and a large enough love for golf that we don't take no for an answer easily.
Well, I love that, and and that's sometimes what it takes. You two are fast becoming pioneers for this particular movement, and I'm always happy to give both of you a voice with the programs. And I think, just to touch on a little bit of a personal story, I had a cousin of mine. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but some years ago, he was involved in an accident at work, and he lost from, I think it was, I'm trying to remember now which, I think it was his right arm. Yeah, it was his right arm. He lost from his elbow down, and he ultimately had, prostheses and things like that over time. But he grew up and, loved playing golf and wasn't sure if he was ever going to play again. And excuse me. And long story short, he decided to get back out there, and of course he could only play with the one hand as Gianna does. But what was very uniquely interesting is for many, many years, I can remember, because I played with him on and off over the years as we grew up. He was a terrible putter, and interestingly enough, after he had this mishap, putting became his strong game. So much so that he played at Glen Abbey up in, of course, I'm originally from Canada, which is in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, and was the home of the Canadian Open for many, many years. In fact, they just played the Canadian Open again this year. And out of the 18 greens, he one-putted 13 in one of the rounds that he played. Now, so he garnered the name One Putt from all of his playing buddies. And he proudly wore that. In fact, they had a shirt made up that said One Putt. But, what was interesting is that he could have walked away and said, what, I'm never going to be able to play or do something that I love. And he decided, much like yourself, to rise up and accept the challenge. And he adapted his game to be able to get out there and enjoy it. And we played for many, many years after. And unfortunately, due to other health issues, he's not with us, as I mentioned. But the point is that he was able to adapt, get out, and continue to play something that he loved. And he actually improved in an area that he was not very good at, because it gave him a greater incentive to want to get out there and work on his game. And obviously he couldn't hit the ball as far anymore, and he wasn't quite as able to hit some of the shots that he once did. But he adapted, which is the key word there, is he adapted to his circumstances and didn't give up on himself. And he played golf until the very end. So it's possible, and he's living proof, as are you, and as are Gianna and many others out there that are doing just that. So I guess my words to the listeners out there is, listen to tonight's story. If you're just joining the conversation, we're talking with my very special guest, Yvette Pegues, and she is a great inspiration. She obviously suffered a traumatic brain injury a number of years ago, but she's risen above and met the challenge, and has written 2 great books, one alongside 2 of her boys, Elijah and Isaiah, and it's called My Mummy Had Brain Surgery and I'm Okay. It's a great book, and we're going to talk in just a moment about where you can get your hot little hands on it. And then the other one is The Art of Adaptability, which is more of a workbook, if you will, for not just companies, but also families to use to better understand some of the challenges and how to cope and deal with some of those circumstances that you might be facing. So 2 great books. Let's talk about one final thing, if we can, and then I'll let you let the folks know where they can read this. We've been talking a little bit about the golf. What do you see in your mind, when you close your eyes and you see moving forward where golf is concerned, what would you like to see happen, and what do you see happening?
I see individuals today who are post-war, post-injury, getting health and wellness experience that they weren't expecting. I use muscles when I play golf. My swing uses back muscles that I don't use anywhere else. The social growth of my friend group has grown, and it's included some people I don't think I would have met otherwise. Those are unexpected benefits of the game. There's also the mental wellness of, Gianna, to get out of bed and get out of your head, to think that your world is bigger than just the room where you spend your respite, to know that you can get out of the house and get out of your bed and out of your head socially and emotionally really contributes to mental wellness. What I hope to see going forward, obviously, is this para golf movement. I am still in the recreational stage of golf. I can totally see Gianna doing professional, competitive golf in the Paralympics. I'd love to see golf added. I'd love to see, different cities and states motivate others to get out of bed, out of their head, onto the course, get into the sun, and learn this game of golf. It's actually my favorite land activity and my land sport that I wasn't even expecting. So I really am grateful, obviously, that Golf Talk Live and you give us a voice to talk about adaptive golf, because most people don't even know that I could play golf, Ted. And when I tell people, they're not usually believing that I'm playing the golf they know. And it is the same golf, and it is the same game. And for the most part, to be able to play it socially has completely and totally changed my life. In fact, we didn't talk much about this, but I was able to take golf to one of the Miss Wheelchair USA pageants. There was a local coach there. He came out, and each of the women who were competing for their respective state were able to try golf for the very first time, and at least 50% of them did it again.
Yeah, and that's something, like I said, it obviously has opened up, competing in that competition as well has allowed you to open doors to, folks that maybe didn't have or wouldn't even think of exploring this as an opportunity for them. And as most people know that have been in the golf business, whether you're somebody like myself that teaches and obviously does what I do here on Thursday nights and Tuesday mornings on the shows, or you're somebody that works in a company, whether it's a top 100 or not, golf is always been a great business tool. And there are so many entrepreneurs out there, and particularly women entrepreneurs, that are fast growing at just a phenomenal pace. And I think what the message that I would want to relay to those listening is, let's not just limit it to those groups. Let's expand it to include other groups that maybe might not think that there's an opportunity for them. Whether they ever have the ability to play, as you suggest that Gianna might in a paralegal competition or not, just getting out there and connecting and reconnecting with your community. You mentioned earlier, and I've actually had some on the show, guests who were former military and obviously have had some injuries as a result, and yet they've too have grappled to golf as a way of getting them up out of bed or getting them out of it. It's actually literally has turned their lives around, because what it does is it gives them a purpose. Some of them have played golf in the past. Some have never picked up a golf club at all in their life. And now as therapy, they're using that, and they've found a new quote-unquote love and are out there doing whatever they need to do to enjoy this game. So there are so many great opportunities that can present itself through this great game. It's not just a game. I've always said this, and I've said this very recently on the shows. Golf and life mimic one another in so many ways, more so than any other game or sport out there. And I'll very quickly explain for some of you that maybe you're just tuning in tonight for the first time. When you think of yourselves, for those of you that play golf and for those that you have never played golf, hear this. When you're out in the golf course, you're going to be faced with various challenges, whether it be a bunker, water hazard or deep rough or whatever the case may be. To successfully navigate some of those challenges, it takes a certain skill set, not just physical skill set, but it takes some thought upstairs. So how do I do this? What approach do I do? How do I handle this particular situation? Well, the same thing happens in life. We get faced with different challenges in life, and how we handle and adapt to those challenges decides whether or not we move forward with our lives. So golf can be a great way of testing some of those challenges. They're not going to be exactly the same, but it gives you and helps you to develop a skill set in handling and overcome obstacles that you can then transfer into your everyday life experience. So there's a great benefit to learning this game. It's not just about hitting a little white ball into a hole. It's about learning new skills, learning to overcome challenges that you can later, again, use in your everyday life. And that's really what golf, in my view, is really about. And you can have some fun along the way and meet new people. What are your thoughts there about that?
I agree completely. It's a very strategic game. I've had a similar conversation with others, and they're like, well, golf is too slow. It doesn't move quickly enough. Well, guess what? We have two sides of our brain, and we should have equally divided time where we're active and sweating and moving quickly, and times when we can walk through this strategic game of golf and learn those very things that you discussed.
Yeah, and that's what I try to, when I teach golf, that's what it's great to teach them the stance and the grip and all these other things, the basics and fundamentals that we have to learn. But I want them to have a good experience when they go out on the golf course. Obviously, I want them to have fun and enjoy themselves. And whether they're, breaking 100 or scratch golfer really is irrelevant. If they're out there having fun and enjoying themselves, obviously I want them to improve as they go along. But I want them to challenge themselves and to have fun and enjoy the experience. And it's a great social thing as well. And it's a great, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great business networking tool for those of you out there. And you can be an employee of one. It doesn't matter. Get out on the golf course and invite somebody out there. Invite a client to play, or invite, another thing that can be done as well, and I've often said this, is even if you don't have time to play a full round of golf, invite a few friends out and go and take a group lesson together. There's lots of great programs out there, a wine and dine, if you will, and make a social event and wrap it around some golf lessons or a golf outing of some kind. It's just a great social thing. So there's a lot of different things that you could do. And what you really show here, Yvette and Jana and my cousin and many others that fall into this group, is that there's no excuse for getting out there and trying. Even if you don't become the next latest, greatest thing out in the PGA or LPGA Tour, it doesn't matter. Just go out there and try it. And I promise you, you will have fun just like everybody else. Yvette, as we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity for two things. Let the folks know where they can get the books if they're interested in getting a copy. And also I know that if folks are maybe interested in having you come speak or get involved in that sort of thing, how they can go about doing that, and if obviously your website.
Absolutely. And if I could just add on to what you said earlier, it's a great professional game. It really is. I think I've been able to connect on the golf course with people I didn't know before starting the game, who became so special and important to me by the time we got to the ninth hole. It's an incredible game, but it's almost like you said, it's the school of golf, because you're constantly learning, and you can play golf as long as you can get to the golf course. I have had experiences with, men and women in their 80s still out there playing golf. It's one of the very few activities you can do well into your mature and seasoned ages. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for having me on the show. The books are available, obviously, on Amazon. The Art of Adaptability, exclusively featuring the 4 4s for newly diagnosed and disabled persons. Also, My Mommy Had Brain Surgery, and I'm Okay, can also be found both on Amazon. You can find them through my website, which is www.yvettepegues.com. As long as you can spell my name, you can find me, and that's also where you can find our books. I also want to give you a resource to the USAGA, right? That's the U.S. Adaptive Golf of America. And why that's important is because no matter where you're listening to this podcast from, whether it's live or in a replay, you can go to usaga.org to find resources near you, wherever you are. And obviously, if you can't find anything in your immediate area, you can contact the USAGA Outreach Coordinator, which is Bob Thibodeau, and I'll give you his number. I'm sure he won't mind. Tell him I said you can call. It's 770-856-9442. Again, that's 770-856-9442. Or go to usaga.org to find a local resource, which means someone to train you in your adaptive condition and meet you where you are, and also find you a local golf course that have the equipment that you need to get started. So I'm excited about being on the show. Obviously, it would be amazing if you reach out to me via Yvette Pegues Speaking Engagements at your place of business, wherever it is you're listening to this amazing podcast from.
Well, Yvette, thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. It's been a pleasure, and I'm glad that you were able to come back and join me this evening. And I think what you're doing is fantastic, not just from the golf standpoint, but just as a general rule. I think that the more awareness that we bring for those out there that maybe are struggling with similar situations or trying to adapt in their circumstances, I think the more awareness that we bring to it is going to be a great thing. And, you know, if I can use golf in some way to help further open those doors, you know, I'm always available and welcome to do that. But thank you, Yvette, for coming and sharing a little bit more of your story tonight with my audience.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for leaving the world better than you found it, Ted.
Thank you. And say hello to your two boys and tell them they did a great job. They should be very proud of themselves.
Thank you so much. I'll be sure to let them know.
All right. You have a great evening.
You do the same. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest this evening, Yvette Pegues, the Chief Transformation Officer, as I mentioned, of Your Invisible Disability Group and Mrs. Wheelchair International 2016-17, and also the host of www.disabilitylife.tv. Make sure you check her out. And go to Amazon.com, and you will find her two great books there, The Art of Adaptability, exclusively featuring the 4 4s for newly diagnosed and disabled persons, and also My Mommy Had Brain Surgery and I'm Okay. And you can search under her name as well, and her surname is spelled Pegues, and of course Yvette, Yvette is her first name. Again, a special thanks to the guys and that on Coach's Corner, Chuck Evans, Bill Abrams, and Jamie Leno Zimron. Thanks, guys, for doing a fantastic job. And thank you to golfswing.com for coming on board as our exclusive sponsor for the Coach's Corner panel. Thank you very much. We appreciate your continued support. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with a quick commercial break one more time from our newest advertiser on the program, golfswing.com.
Are you finally ready to improve your golf game? Golfswing.com is changing the way golfers learn online. With the largest collection of golf training programs and drills on the planet, Golfswing.com can help you improve every part of your game. Whether you want to gain more distance, hit it closer, or just sink more putts, Golfswing.com's staff of world-class coaches can help you gain the results you need. Watch unlimited videos on any device from anywhere in the world and start playing better, scoring lower, having more fun, and saving money. Get your fix on demand at Golfswing.com.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to being back next week with another great Coach's Corner panel and, of course, another interesting guest here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.